Are you ready, kids?
Hello, it's Employee Emilion, and welcome back to SpongeComs. And today's episodes are Season 1, Episode 14's SB-129 and Karate Choppers. It's been a little while since I've done this, about a little over 2 months now, so excuse me if I'm a teensy bit rusty, but my New Year's resolution for this is to make SpongeComs more interesting, which is convenient since these episodes aired on December 31st, 1999. And were mostly written by the same people, but I'll draw some differences between them because they are vastly different episodes. But with that said, let's get into them. So as Doug Lawrence just said, this episode is called SB-129, and it was written by Aaron Springer, Eric Weiss, and Mr. Lawrence. And funny thing about the episode's title is that it was originally going to be called SpongeBob 3000. That's what it says in all the production material. And it even said that on the Nick.com website for a little while, that it would be called SpongeBob 3000. But at some point, they probably changed it to SB-129 because, first of all, Squidward doesn't go to the year 3000, he goes to 4017. And also to make it sound a little more futuristic and weird, I guess. But there is a little bit of truth behind that title. SB meaning SpongeBob, 1 meaning that this is a season 1 episode, obviously, and 29 because this was the 29th episode to be produced. It was the 28th to air and is the 28th in like the standard SpongeBob order. But Valentine's Day was made before this, so it's technically correctly titled SB-129. At least we know that now. In the future, ooh. But yeah, this is a really good episode. A lot of people love it. A lot of people consider it one of their favorites, if not their absolute favorite. And yeah, this is probably my third favorite season 1 episode. I even said in the countdown video that this is just a very brilliant Squidward episode. It is a very quintessential Squidward episode. I mean, it starts with a very standard SpongeBob and Patrick annoying Squidward scene. Not out of place in season 1, not out of place in something like jellyfishing or opposite day. So it gets you in the mood for like, you've got to get your shoes into Squidward. That does that very, very well. But soon enough, it adopts an identity of its own this episode, and SpongeBob has a black tie there. Don't know if it was because of like outlining issues or... But yeah, Krusty Krab is closed on Sundays. This is going to come up pretty frequently in the show, in episodes like Squid's Day Off and Good Neighbors, to throw in some extra pressure for Squidward to get away from these two ignorami. And he gets himself stuck in the freezer for 2,000 years. Like, this is very... I can tolerate this, that the fact that he was able to survive in there for 2,000 years and that his brain didn't shut off after just one, and that's being generous. It just gets into the future in a very simple way. Not a lot of science fiction stuff happens in SpongeBob just yet, outside of Sandy's rocket, so I can dig it. And here we see the future of 4017. Don't know why they didn't just say 3999 or the year 4000. I guess so it was even more futuristic if it was just... And the only clue we have of the exact year is a calendar in one of the backgrounds. And even then, I don't know if they were talking about it, if they ever made any decision about it. But it is very funny how 2 years ago, when it was March 6th, 2017, this was a big deal. Like, it was all over social media websites that Squidward got frozen in time today, but I think that the 2,000 years later thing is just a rough estimation. Like, it would be very odd if it said 2018 years later. But enough nitpicking about dates and all. The future scene in this episode is really dang cool. A lot of great animation. Everything is chrome in the future. You got that right, SpongeBob. And really good music, too. They basically took the closing credits theme for the show. Don't know if it has an actual name, but Don't know if it actually has a name. It's just called SpongeBob Closing Credits theme wherever I find it. So they took that and added some futuristic bleeping and blooping to it, and Squidward is having a very hard time coping with the future here. This is a bit of a classic SpongeBob joke. Pretty much every time you think that time is moving too fast, just curl up into a ball and yell future to yourself. It won't make you look mad at all. So yeah, the animation is really good. Like, you get the same sort of color, a lot of light blues and whites and light purples that make it feel a little more futuristic and weird. Don't know why the Krusty Krab, or whatever its replacement several hundred years on, would need to be doing with a lot of like chrome all around, but it works. And here's where the time travel actually kicks in, because Squidward was frozen in time for a couple thousand years, so now he actually gets to travel through time, and this is where an actual adventure begins, and it's one of the most surreal adventures that Squidward's ever gone on. It feels like the universe is really testing his patience with SpongeBob, and I like this little plot point. It's not really talked about often, but Squidward is straight up going to what he considers the past, instead of an in-between where he can be back to his own time period, because he knows that SpongeBob's not only in the present, but the future, so might as well go as far back to the past as possible, and he ends up in a very specific time period of about 20 million years when trilobites and certain types of undersea worms coexisted in harmony. I haven't got it in my notes here, but don't worry, we'll be seeing prehistoric Bikini Bottom sometime in the future. Well, our future, you know. And yeah, the art in this portion of the episode is also really good. A lot of browns and greens that make you feel like you're in a weird forest or somewhere you don't know where you are. And that's exactly how they want Squidward to feel here. That this is just so not his usual place. I don't know how to describe it, but there's also a tribal version of the SpongeBob theme song, like a more primitive interpretation of it that's done here, and I like it as well. It definitely has the same beat that these caveman SpongeBob's descendants are gonna have in 5 years, but oh my gosh, that is just really... That was originally my title card, and then I thought, nah. But yeah, primitive SpongeBob and primitive Patrick, not SpongeGar and Patar, those are a couple million years away. These guys are really funny, I like them. And a couple years ago, there were a lot of memes surrounding primitive SpongeBob. Specifically a pose that's coming up where he just goes into like an attack stance, like he's preparing for something, and he's caught off guard. It's a really good pose. They do kind of stretch it out a little bit. They do kind of stretch his model a little bit to make it seem a little more alien, and I think that works well. And here we see Squidward partaking in what is called a casualty loop in like time meaning in science fiction, where someone accidentally goes back to the past and makes something that they don't like. Here's the man of the hour. And here's another good shot of them just looking up and drooling. And so yeah, I do really like this little tribal sequence. And I do really like the idea of Squidward accidentally inventing jellyfishing and causing the one thing that made him go on this adventure in the first place. Like, they get through a lot of, like, time travel mumbo-jumbo in here just to make it a little more... I don't know, just to make it a little more packed. Like, there's only so much you can do in 11 or 12 minutes. I think this is one of the 12-minute episodes, or close to 12 minutes. And they go a lot of different places. They go to how Squidward feels about the future, how he feels about the past, how these relate to who he is in the present, and how SpongeBob is always in time and space, and how cavemen are gonna really hate clarinet music. Just you guys wait until dubstep comes around. Oh, and oh my gosh, the breaking of the time machine and into the void. Gee whiz, this was so frightening as a kid, and I think it's one of the reasons why apparently this episode didn't air often on the US feed of Nickelodeon back in the day. I guess because this is just too avant-garde to air often. But to be fair, I do kind of see this being an aspect to Steven Hillenburg's sensibilities and exactly what he wants to see out of his animation. Like, one of the things that really got him into animation in the first place was a short by Paul Dreesen, an animator from the 70s, called The Killing of an Egg, which is very short, but it has a lot of like themes about recursion and destruction, and I like it. It is a pretty good short. It's not the most interesting thing in the world, but you can tell some of it inspired this Alone Zone. And gosh, this is just so chilling. I love it. Apparently they just got different people from the studio to just say alone. And that was really good. And here we see Squidward finally being able to realize that being alone ain't great. And there's a little bit of a Deus Ex Machina here with the time machine just appearing underneath the alone zone. That's what I like to call it. But he's earned it. That's my excuse. He's earned it. And finally all the backwards and distorted music can stop. They don't distort the music that often anymore, so that might be a great place to end it. And he's genuinely happy to see SpongeBob and Patrick again. That's what makes it such a good Squidward episode. Like, he goes to all these different extremes to get away from SpongeBob and Patrick, but they keep following him throughout time. Figuratively, like, they themselves, as far as we know, didn't time travel with him. But yeah, Squidward is a little green screened here. I don't know why, but yeah. Dang solid episode. I love this. It's one of the all-time most memorable SpongeBob episodes for a very good reason. Karate Choppers was written by Aaron Springer and Eric Weiss again, and newcomer to the show, Meriwether Williams, who essentially replaced Peter Burns as one of the main writers for, like, post-production in terms of script writing, and the script editor for the rest of the pre-movie run, and she did a darn good job because the writing quality is still getting a lot better around this point, and I partially have to thank her for that. And in general, I do really like the way that this episode functions. Like, there's a lot of emotion in it, there's a lot of stakes, there's a lot of character in it. And I do have to thank her a little bit, even if she wasn't the only one who worked on it. Karate Choppers is one of those episodes that doesn't have the highest reputation. Like, it isn't SB-129 or Pizza Delivery, but it is a pretty well-received episode all around. I don't see many people disliking it. And I think that's because, in terms of what it does, like supplying action, it does it really dang well. Because this is one of the few karate episodes where SpongeBob is on par with Sandy in terms of fighting ability. And in general, their fighting is really good, really well animated. And this also shows us the first time that SpongeBob and Sandy wear their karate gear of big rubber gloves and a headgear, piece of headset, whatever, for SpongeBob, and that gives them some more identity. I like it. And I think one of the reasons this is a particularly well-liked episode to this day is that it does have a grounding in reality. The story, SpongeBob is getting addicted to something, as is Sandy. They're getting addicted to karate, and it's causing a lot of problems in SpongeBob's daily life. And they have to deal with that. I mean, replace karate with something else, and this episode takes on a whole new meaning. But otherwise, another thing I do enjoy about this episode is that the locations they go to have a lot of personality. They go to the Bargain Mart, which has a lot of tin cans and a lot of Kelpo. I don't know if Kelpo is like a big selling brand in Bikini Bottom, but I digress. The bathroom in the Krusty Krab is very dark and atmospheric, it isn't that way later on. And you also see the Bikini Bottom Park for the first time, but I'll get to those when I get to them. And that might be the squirrel mask that SpongeBob later uses in the Alaskan Bullworm episode, but jury's still out on that because they do look slightly different. And this volcano hot sauce face that appears here doesn't take a genius to figure out that this is Tom Kenny, regular voice actor on SpongeBob. And apparently, as is said in this episode's commentary on the Season 1 DVD box set, Tom Kenny actually had to paint his face red in the Nickelodeon Studios restroom. Can't imagine how awkward that'd be. Can't imagine. That joke doesn't make the most sense, the tongue being a novelty toy. But I still enjoy this scene. It is really good. There's a lot of action, a lot of suspense. And that bubble transition is frozen in one little sector of the screen. And here we see the main conflict of the episode arise. SpongeBob is still addicted to karate, and it's having an effect on his job at the Krusty Krab, which is one of the things that he values the most in life. So, yeah, I totally get it. I totally get that there's a conflict of interest in his head about his karate addiction and his job at the Krusty Krab. And Squidward's hairpiece right there, very stylish. And here's another My Leg gag, featuring Fred. Yeah, Fred isn't... I think he only said My Leg a few times in the old seasons of SpongeBob, but it is associated with him, which says a lot about his memorability and the memorability of the line. There's really not too much to say about these scenes in the Krusty Krab, and they're good. They're decent. I like them. I find them funny. But I do totally understand that some people would find them kind of annoying, that SpongeBob just can't get his mind off karate. But to me, that adds a little bit to his character. It's kind of showing that it's getting to his head. It's starting to affect his job. Like, he's still looking at his hands. I don't know why. And I think I might have misheard on my last rewatch, but I think he calls Squidward Pooh Bah there. And I think that's a character on the Flintstones, like Fred's boss in that show. And here's what I'm talking about with the bathroom. Like, the lights aren't on, so this is probably after closing or something, since there aren't people coming in and out of the Krusty Krab. And for a little while, I thought that the way SpongeBob said, "fired," in that scene is the exact same way he says it later on, or like they recycled a sound clip, a voice sample. But overall, yeah, this is probably the part that is probably the most obnoxious to some fans, that Sandy does get SpongeBob fired by accident, but she does apologize for it. She does tell Mr. Krabs what was going on, and she does get SpongeBob briefly rehired again. Oh, and also the animation on SpongeBob here, where he just completely loses it after getting fired. The way his face kind of flushes into his body. You can see a teensy little error with one of the holes going above his head, but otherwise, this has a lot of character. I do really like it. It's perfect for a music video, if I do say so myself. And yeah, this is one of SpongeBob's first really big tantrums, and they go all out, and Tom Kenny goes all out in making him sound like he's absolutely devastated with his life, and the animators just have him jumping around the screen. It's really good. Gosh. Starting to run out of things to say about this episode, even though I like it so much, so I'll just put a dancing baby there. That was a little racist, Mr. Krabs. He sniffed Sandy and called her a mammal. But this is probably my favorite thing about this episode. It's very low-key compared to the rest of the big conflicts in this episode. It is very season 1 in terms of its laid-back attitude. But I do really like SpongeBob and Sandy trying to repress their love of karate and end up liking it even more. Like, if you look at this episode through the quote-unquote karate interpretation, it's pretty terrifying in a way. But there are a lot of good jokes here, like SpongeBob pretending to be a plant. And that is a big debate for, like, softcore marine biologists. Like, are sponges actually animals or are they plants? But they are indeed animals. They consume... I don't remember the exact qualifications for an animal, but SpongeBob is a cartoon animal. And he has a lot of character here. Keep dancing, baby. Oh, and this is what I was talking about before with the Bikini Bottom Park. Like, you rarely ever see the park, even though it's a pretty memorable location. Like, the only episodes I can name off the top of my head that have the Bikini Bottom Park are this, Life of Crime, and Goo Goo Gas, I think. Oh, and Cuddly Hugs. There might be more, but it only features very slightly, in very small quantities in certain episodes. And I think that's because when the crew wants SpongeBob and Co. to be in a grassy area, they'll typically just go to Jellyfish Fields. But it'd be kind of weird doing a picnic in Jellyfish Fields again. So yeah, we gradually see their love of karate building up again as they absolutely wreck some salami and are a little infatuated by each other cutting karate. And eventually just dismantling the whole park, like all the rocks. But that's only after this big montage where they show that they love karate chopping sandwich ingredients, which leads to a decent enough ending where Mr. Krabs sees that they have potential as karate master Krabby Patty makers. And it's the only time in SpongeBob history, as far as I remember, where Sandy is hired at the Krusty Krab. Like, SpongeBob and Squidward, of course. Patrick's had a couple one-off single days at the Krusty Krab. And there have been characters like Plankton, Mrs. Puff, Karen, that have been hired on occasion, but this is the only time that I know of where Sandy actually works at the Krusty Krab. And I don't know what that exactly says about her character or her character in relation to Mr. Krabs, but it is pretty cool seeing it here, if I do say so myself. And it's a pretty sweet ending. It makes sense. It does resolve the conflict. We know it's going to go back to normal by the end, with Sandy and SpongeBob loving karate in their own way, and Squidward hating everyone just like he does at the end of this episode. But yeah, this is a good ending. I do really like it. Good on Sandy for just chopping the patty mince and hoping that it's cooked by the time it gets down. But anyway, good way to close out SpongeBob 1999. And these were two really good episodes. And I'm very happy that I'm back on track with them. Next time is Sleepy Time and Suds. And my question of the week for you this week is, what is your favorite karate battle in SpongeBob? Because there are a lot of good answers. You can pick one of these. You can pick the one in No Weenies Allowed. You can pick one of the ones in Karate Island. SpongeBob doesn't have as many karate battles as it used to, but back in the day, they had quite a number of them, and they were all pretty dang well animated, so yeah, let your imagination and your memory run wild, and goodbye for now.